You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Our sponsor, Collide, has some big news. If you're an Okta user, they can get your entire fleet up to 100% compliance. How? If a device isn't compliant, the user can't log into your cloud apps until they fix the problem. It's that simple. Without Collide, IT struggles to solve basic problems, like ensuring everyone's OS and browser are up to date. Unsecure devices log into your company's apps with no problems because there's nothing there to stop them. But Collide works seamlessly with Okta to enforce compliance as part of authentication and complete the zero-trust security puzzle. Visit collide.com/CyberWire Daily to learn more or book a demo. That's KOLIDE.com/CyberWire Daily. Cyber agencies warn of BianLian ransomware. There's a new gang using leaked Baduk-based ransomware. Chinese government-linked threat actors target TP-Link routers with custom malware. ChatGPT-themed fleeceware is showing up in online stores. Ukraine is now a member of NATO's Cyber Center. Tim Starks from The Washington Post shares insights on Section 702 renewal. Our guest is Ismael Valenzuela from BlackBerry, sharing findings from their Global Threat Intelligence Report. And the CIA's offer to Russian officials may have had some takers. I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire Intel briefing for Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. We begin today's news with an alert about a currently active ransomware operation. The Australian Cybersecurity Center, the US FBI, and CISA have issued a joint warning about BianLian ransomware. The criminal group behind it has been especially active against targets in Australia, but it represents a general threat. The advisory says the group gains access to victim systems through valid remote desktop protocol credentials. It uses open-source tools and command-line scripting for discovery and credential harvesting, and exfiltrates victim data via file transfer protocol, rclone, or Mega. BianLian had formerly used a double extortion approach, but has recently shifted toward a model that relies solely on threats to release the victim's data, as opposed to encrypt or destroy it. BianLian Group engages in additional techniques to pressure the victim into paying the ransom, for example, printing the ransom note to printers on the compromised network. Employees of victim companies also reported receiving threatening phone calls from individuals associated with the group. Researchers at Cisco Talos published a report Tuesday detailing a new criminal group which is using custom ransomware based on leaked Baduk code in double extortion attacks against U.S. and South Korean business sectors. Talos explained that this is just the most recent group to use Baduk-based ransomware. A member of Baduk reportedly leaked the group's source code on the dark web in September of 2021. The adversaries go by the name RA Group and target insurance, pharmaceutical, wealth management, and manufacturing companies in the U.S. and South Korea, encrypting their data and threatening to sell it to the highest bidder on the dark web unless the company pays a ransom. Unlike some other approaches to extortion, this method puts a time restriction on the victim, which increases the pressure to pay. A Chinese state-sponsored threat actor researchers are calling Camaro Dragon is using a custom backdoor named Horse Shell to infect TP-Link routers. In a report released May 16th, Checkpoint Research found that this advanced persistent threat is using tailored access tools to infect TP-Link routers, specifically targeting European foreign affairs entities. Checkpoint states, the discovery is yet another example of a long-standing trend of Chinese threat actors to exploit internet-facing network devices and modify their underlying software or firmware. The APT's Horse Shell backdoor is a custom implant that allows the organization to maintain persistence on the infected machine. Check Point writes, the implant provides the attacker with three main functionalities: remote shell, file transfer, and tunneling. The implant is not specific to TP-Link routers. It can be configured to affect other firmware as well. The attack vector used to gain infiltration and infection is so far undetermined. There are significant code overlaps between Camaro Dragon's tools and those used by Mustang Panda, enough to suggest that the two APTs with pony car-inspired names are related, but Check Point stops short of identifying them. More research remains to be done, and in the meantime, they're tracking the groups separately. Interest in AI is prompting scammers to turn to AI-themed fleeceware, which they're posting in both the Apple and Google stores. Fleeceware, which enrolls the victim in a free trial that subsequently converts quietly into an unwanted continuing subscription, tends to fly under the online store's security radar, as it occupies a gray area between direct fraud and an offer that's nothing more than a bad deal. They typically don't, for example, collect personal data, nor do they make an overt attempt to subvert the platform's security measures. Sophos researchers detail the ways in which the scam is playing out. They follow 5 distinct fleeceware operations, all of which promise ChatGPT live AI functionality. One of them even trades on ChatGPT's name, calling itself ChatGPT, hoping thereby to gull careless readers eager to get in on the AI. One of the marks of fleeceware is that it charges for products or services that are legitimately offered for free. The current scams are no different. OpenAI offers basic ChatGPT functionality for free on its website. Ukraine is not a NATO member, but it's now a contributing participant, along with Ireland, Iceland, and Japan, in NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, the CCD-COE. Computing reports that progress toward that status began shortly after Russia's invasion last year. It's now a formal reality. The CCD-COE is headquartered in Tallinn, Estonia, and Ukraine's ambassador to Estonia, Mariana Betsa, said the accession was an important event that serves an important step on Ukraine's path to NATO. She added, in the light of Russia's continuous military aggression and hybrid war, Ukraine joining CCD-COE further strengthens our state's cyber capability. I want to thank the CCD-COE sponsor states for inviting Ukraine to join. I also extend my special gratitude to the Republic of Estonia as the hosting state for their support and assistance on our path to NATO CCD-COE. And finally, the CIA recently published a video invitation offering disaffected Russians, especially officials, a secure way of contacting them, and it may be attracting some takers. The Wall Street Journal reports that an official has told them it is resulting in contact. The official declined to say how many Russians had made contact or what information they were offering, but the tone of the remarks is broadly optimistic. The message that went out through a range of social media channels was a digital expression of the goals the CIA's Deputy Director of Operations, David Marlowe, said back in November. He said, "We're looking around the world for Russians who are as disgusted with that as we are, because we're open for business." Coming up after the break, Tim Starks from The Washington Post shares insights on Section 702 renewal. Our guest is Ismael Valenzuela from BlackBerry, sharing the findings from their Global Threat Intelligence Report. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Mimecast. You're wondering if you need more email and collaboration security, because, as it turns out, just protecting your workspace with M365 isn't good enough. You just watched your entire company grind to a screeching halt, all because someone opened a phishing email. Next time, don't rely on one-size-fits-all security. Protect your inbox with Mimecast and diversify your security stack. For a free trial, go to mimecast.com and keep your business from falling apart. Expel knows security isn't a checkbox. It should empower your business to minimize risk, identify and address threats, and grow. What's Expel's secret? It's technology and people working together to make security easy to understand, use, and continuously improve. Powered by their security operations platform, Expel offers managed detection and response, vulnerability prioritization, phishing, and threat hunting. It's security that makes sense. Learn more about Expel, hear what customers say about the visibility and fast outcomes they get, or request a free trial at expel.com/cyberwire. Ismael Valenzuela is VP of Threat Research and Intelligence at BlackBerry. I spoke with him about the findings from their most recent Global Threat Intelligence Report.
Some of the things that we saw is an increasing trend in use of info stealers. This is, as everything around malware, also related to the economic situation. A lot of people after the pandemic or during the pandemic working from home. Still, we have a lot of remote work, hybrid work. So attackers are taking, advantage of these new remote access capabilities to use these info stealers to steal corporate credentials, sell them on the black market. And this is being leveraged both by cybercrime and also nation states, right, the so-called APTs. And in this report, we talk about the most prevalent one, which is called Redline, that steals a lot of credentials out of systems, browsers, FTP details, VPN details, and much more. Something else that we also saw that we haven't seen for some time is that attackers are trying to maximize their investment by targeting different platforms, not just desktop, but if I can, from the mindset of the attacker, right, the business mindset, if with the same effort I can create a piece of malware that works on a desktop, on a server, on a mobile platform, on Windows, on Mac OS or Linux, that's a much better investment, right, or use of my time. So that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing that there are more instances of malware written in languages like Rust or Golang that can be used across platforms.
Based on the information that you all have gathered here, what are your recommendations? How should organizations best go about protecting themselves?
Well, we always go to the default answers with these, right? We say, we need to ensure that we keep everything patched, and we often call these best practices. And I don't know what to think about it, but it sounds boring, right? We always say best practices sounds like boring. It's important, right? We need to do that, but that's not enough. I think that's like the bare minimum. Because attackers know that a lot of people are, they do implement these best practices. But for example, patching, this is something we have to have. But if there is a supply chain attack, patching is not going to the best defense against that. It's not going to prevent that from happening. So I think that at the same time, there will be organizations out there saying, well, will I be a victim of a supply chain attack? So it all comes down to building a proper threat model. And that starts with, that's a strategy really. Before going and implementing defenses, we need to think about who has something, who has an interest out there, right, in my organization. What do we have that could be interesting for anybody out there? And it could be cyber criminals, and we know that nobody is outside of the scope of those, or it could be a nation state, something a little bit more targeted. And we see this constantly, especially in this world where the geopolitics are so complex right now. We see a lot of those motivated attacks. But in general, having a zero trust mindset, philosophy to approach any defensive strategy where physical attacks are part of that, and a proper threat model according to your industry, to your profile, to your geolocation, where you conduct business. That's important.
Can you make the case here for organizations engaging with someone who provides threat intelligence, an organization like yourselves, and certainly there are other providers out there. For folks who aren't doing that, how do you describe the value proposition there?
I'm glad you asked this, because when I talk about threat intelligence, it's one of these words that can mean a lot of things, right, to different people. So how do we package this, or how do we make it actionable? One of the ways in which we do this is with the reports that you see. We try to make an effort to make this understandable to a lot of different audiences, not just the technical people, which of course they want to know the analysis, right, the nitty-gritty details of the malware, how it works, but also to somebody like a CISO. I talk to a lot of CISOs of organizations that have maybe one or two security people. And that's it. That's what I call the all-around defender, right? The guy that has to wear a lot of hats and secure the endpoint, the servers, the cloud, the network, everything, and more. They do not have the ability to have a lot of people maybe doing threat hunting or things like that. That sounds fascinating, but the reality is that these guys are just trying to putting out fires, trying to patch machines, trying to do instant response. They don't have time for this. But they all need to make decisions and prioritize, where am I going to invest the little time I have or the little money I have? And how do I do this in a way that it's going to be meaningful to my organization? And that's where threat intelligence can help. Threat intelligence has different tiers. It could be operational or tactical at the bottom of that pyramid, or it could be strategic. And this type of strategic information could be in the form of maybe a PowerPoint presentation. For example, if this organization that we're discussing here, a fictitious organization, conducts business in Asia, there is so much interesting activity right now in Southeast Asia. We're seeing a lot of attacks against countries like Singapore, a lot of activity in Taiwan, with actors that are very nations in the area that are very interested in seeing what's happening in some of these countries, not only with government agencies, but also with mining companies, telecommunications, anybody that could be that could have interesting information, right, that a government might be interested in. What could happen if there is, maybe an invasion of Taiwan in the near future? How can that change the whole business outlook for these organizations? What's the activity that's happening right now? How do we detect this? This could be a presentation that could be for a CISO that could translate this information or present it to the board on, look, based on our profile, this is where we should invest in more. This is what we should be doing or stop doing.
That's Ismael Valenzuela from BlackBerry. Joining me once again is Tim Starks. He is the author of the Cybersecurity 202 at the Washington Post. Tim, it's always great to welcome you back.
Hello, hello.
So, very interesting report you put out in a recent Cybersecurity 202 here. You're really looking at Section 702 surveillance and reaching out to your network for insights on that. Can we start off with some explanatory stuff here for folks who may not be familiar with it? How do you describe Section 702?
Yeah, so it is a part of the 1978 Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's always interesting how many of these laws that govern some of our modern digital rules are dated back that far, although the Section 702 powers didn't get created until well after 9/11. This is a part of the law that says that the U.S. intelligence community can conduct bulk, widespread surveillance on foreign targets, ostensibly originally for counterterrorism purposes, without an explicit warrant for each of those pieces of surveillance. The reason it's controversial from the start was that you can target those foreign targets, but they might be communicating with people in the United States. And then after, there are ways for people to, in the security government community, to access or query those communications based on American identifier. So that you get into some real privacy concerns there. But what you also hear from the Biden administration, especially with the Section 702 powers about to expire at the end of this year, that it is a very, very powerful tool. It is perhaps their most powerful tool in certain ways, and that it is increasingly, mostly being used to counter cybercrime.
So you reached out to your network, folks who subscribe to the 202 for insights here, and you got some interesting responses.
Yeah, so we have a subset of our subscribers that we call, with a capital N, the network. And they are people who are experts that we've decided to, when we do a poll, ask them a question and report on their results statistically, but then also for those who are willing to offer an explicit on-the-record comment why they voted the way they did or why they took the answer they did. And in this case, there were three choices. One was just reauthorize it as is. Another was reauthorize it with changes, and another was don't reauthorize it. And in this case, the pretty significant majority, 64%, said reauthorize it but make some changes, and then another 20% said reauthorize it. So that's a pretty significant percentage. They're saying we need this power. And another complicator in getting this thing reauthorized is that Republicans have taken issue with FISA overall, not this particular section, due to some negative reports about how this was used to spy on the Trump campaign or a Trump campaign official. And actual audits were saying, this is not, the way they did this was very faulty. So the gripes about FISA usage in this case seem quite legitimate. So you have a combination of folk on the left and the right who don't like this Section 702, but the people who are in the cyber field that are our readers and parts of our network are saying we need to keep this for the most part.
Can we go through the arguments here? I mean, for those who are saying that we want to reauthorize and perhaps do so with changes versus those who are saying, no, we should need to scrap this and start over?
Yeah, which is interesting because if you look at the percentage of people who are the majority saying we need to reauthorize this with changes, they don't have one answer, which is another indicator of how difficult this is going to be, right? We already mentioned the conflict on the left and right, but people don't have a unified idea about the specific way in which we need to make changes. So this is one of the sort of stealth aspects of the survey result is that we see how more complicated this is going to be. So one example of a change that people have talked about is we mentioned that issue of people being able to query Americans' data or access it indirectly through the sort of incidentally collected communications that were targeting foreigners. There's some suggestion that we need a warrant requirement for that for the American part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are issues related to the EU and the data privacy situation we've got going with them. They have had objections to the way 702 has been used in a bulk way to collect information on people there. That's another issue to consider. There's also the fact that apparently, we mentioned that American warrant requirement. There's some concern from some of our folk in the network poll who said, actually, if you do that, that's going to make the EU even more mad because they're already mad that we're treating them as a sort of second-class target. So that targeting part is a complicator. On the side of people who are in favor of renewing it, they do cite the Biden administration arguments, which are this is an extremely, extremely powerful tool. It has saved lives on the counterterrorism side. It's one of the reasons why we don't have a ton of terror attacks all these days. On the negative side, there are people who are saying it's just too much privacy violation. It's unconstitutional fundamentally. The range of opinions was really fascinating.
Yeah. How do you suppose this is going to play out? I mean, as you mentioned, we've got till the end of the year to make something happen here.
Oh, God. Why are you doing this to me, Dave? I've covered Congress for so long, and it's always hard to predict what they're going to do. And my default mode is always to say if there's something that they might do, they probably will not. In this case, I think there's a chance. There have been times where they've sort of punted this kind of thing. Oh, the deadline's coming up. We weren't ready. We'll just renew it for 6 more months. And then they fight about it for a longer time. And they're like, oh, we're not ready yet. It was 6 more months. And then eventually they'll come around to something, permanently. I think that there's room for compromise here. The issue is how much of it the administration will accept. I mentioned that American warrant requirement, American citizen warrant requirement. The administration says that's not workable. It won't work. At some point, maybe they might come to a compromise in Congress, but will the administration buy it? And if they don't, obviously there's veto authority. So it's a tough one. There are times where I feel confident that I think I know how things are going to go. I don't feel good about this one. I have no clue, honestly.
Fair enough.
What do you think? Where's it going to go? What do you think?
Well, we're out of time, Tim. Tim Starks is the author of the Cybersecurity 202 at the Washington Post. Tim, always a pleasure.
It was a pleasure until the end, Dave.
I'll talk to you next time.
Later.
Dreamport is a mission accelerator that combines state-of-the-art facilities, innovative programs, and imaginative people charged with finding that spark that leads to unparalleled capability. Headquartered in Columbia, Maryland, Dreamport was created through a partnership intermediary agreement with U.S. Cybercom, awarded to Missy in May 2018. For more information, please visit dreamport.tech. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by John Petrick. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Tired of cybersecurity mega conferences? MWise is different. With a focused agenda and targeted problem solving, MWise is where security's best go to get better. From September 18th through the 20th in Washington, D.C., you'll join a special community of security's sharpest minds, hear perspectives you might not get anywhere else, and reach a new level of mastery that'll prepare you for what's next. Register early and save at mwise.mandiant.com/conf23. That's mwise.mandiant.com/conf23.